I will introduce myself once again. I'm Jim Gustafson, professor of psychiatry at the University of Wisconsin Medical School, giving my fourth of 36 lectures every Friday, posted on YouTube by mid-afternoon, Friday afternoon. Today's lecture is called Photography of the Pause. The field of psychotherapy is about positioning. Being too close to dangerous forces captures our patients. Our work is to indicate to them how they might step back from such forces and re-enter from a different position. What is the evidence for this procedure being useful? You may or may not know the only prospective 55-year study of 698 children who were in prenatal care at the beginning of the study and are now 55 years old, called Children of the Garden Island. The most striking finding for me at every 10-year interval, including this year it will be again, is in the following sentence. The overwhelming majority of the resilient men and women handled the stress of parental problems, the families they were in, by detachment and withdrawal. They stepped back. They went out the back door. While their troubled peers and their siblings in the same family tended to get enmeshed. And they never got disconnected from that. In other words, resilience in the patient comes from opening to what is helpful and closing to what is harmful. A match rather than a mismatch. Now, what is the most beautiful and effortless position for reading a match versus a mismatch? It turns out to be a remarkable secret, right under our noses. Our great instrument of orientation is built to pause, as I am right now in mid-sentence, after a phrase is spoken. In that pause is everything we need. To see, to hear, to smell, to taste, and to touch. We can see it in the movement of the body. We can hear it in the discord of the words. We can hear and see it in the patient's look of amazement or even consternation. Finally, we can see and hear it again in the emergency in the patient's dream, which reruns at night what goes on in the day. Conversely, we can notice how the patients run right through the pauses, or they give half a sentence and then they stop. It also turns out that our most capable writer of the English language knew precisely how to take this turn halfway through the line. Stephen Booth shows how Shakespeare could begin a line in his sonnets or anywhere and then slide into a completely different context in the second half of the line. Syntactically, metaphorically, phonetically. If you don't know what those words are, it's okay. Take, for example, the opening line in Sonnet 94. They that have the power to hurt and will do none. Notice the shift phonetically. That's in the consonants and the vowels. The hard R's of power to hurt. And the soft O's in will do none in the concluding phrase. As Booth demonstrates, this is but one dimension of Shakespeare's continuous development of the line. His own characters, as Booth exclaimed, do not know when they begin a sentence, pause, where it's going. Where it's going to go. My point, and Booth's, and Shakespeare's, is that human beings can begin to say about anything. And right there is where you must go slow enough to hear the inconvenient truth or movement. I call it the wellspring, by which I mean something like a meristem in a flower or a tree, or in a group of stem cells in an animal. Its potential is so great, but none at all for those in a rush. What is a typical morning in the clinic? Now we'll look at this very phenomenon. It occurs in every sentence. Under your nose, if you'll listen. On a Thursday night before a Friday clinic recently, I dreamt what is apparently a simple little dream in one dimension. I dreamt I am in the photography business, having to rush to take more pictures and having to rush to develop them. When I wake up, I think, how can this be so? A dream is always so. Pause, right? But in what way? I was exactly what I found myself in the next morning with. The dream, as always, at 4 or 5 a.m. will show you where the map for the day. I had a line of patients rushing to get somewhere and not stopping for anything. A couple of them I could get slowed down enough to notice the discord emerging in their own sentence, signaling how he or she had slid into a context far different from where the sentence began. I'll give you some examples. One was a woman who was a nanny who found herself, like the patients of Breuer and Freud, in the hands of a parent or a pair of parents hiring her. Pause. With unlimited demands for her time. Inconvenient truth, huh? One was a graduate student who found herself once again with a sister pretending sincere interest in her. Pause. While going on nonstop about herself. A second dimension of an inconvenient truth had entered and could be reckoned. Often I am fortunate to get a third dimension in these pauses. A very terse one was from a patient who was, this is from my book in 2007, or 2000, who was depressed about having to go back to work instead of staying home with her daughter because her husband had become ill, so she was the one that had to earn the money. She dreamt of a black ocean liner. Pause. See, the dreams have the same structure of the beginning of a line and then a pause. She dreamt of a black ocean liner, pause, that had flipped over on its side. You ever heard of an ocean liner doing a flip? Now there's an inconvenient truth, and what is it, right? To make this brief story even briefer, the ocean liner reminded her of cruise ships in Florida, and, pause, there would be no more cruises if she was working. And she cried. The black recalled funerals. The flip of the huge ship. Now that's the most absurd part of the dream, and always the most important, therefore. Reminded her of her cat, who knocks over vases, toys, glasses of water, whatever she likes. Here she laughed. Her cat, as a goddess, had knocked her for a loop from a sweet world into a funereal world. A huge distance, an inconvenient truth, to be sure, what had happened to her, right? Only a metaphor can comprehend that kind of jump. That evening, and here we conclude the lecture, I thought several dimensions further in my dream of my photography business. You didn't know I was in this business, did you? Actually, I come from a family line in photography, from a little studio in Morris, Illinois. Goes back a number of generations. Thankfully, in this recession, or whatever we call this, I am not in a panic about having to rush out and take more photographs and rush back and develop them. Thank God. I have become a different kind of photographer in the family line who positions himself to take pictures of pauses in which everything decisive happens. In his photography of the transitions at sunrise and sunset, Galen Rowell says he goes between the warm light of day and the cold light of night. Right? So it's that kind of pause. Thus, I am beautifully positioned. I just step back and wait, confident that I know where the beat or pulse lies. Here we are, pause, that will give me everything I want. Thank you.